Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Point. Today in our studios we have an eminent personality, Jane Earl. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Rich Mix. Rich Mix is a charity and a social enterprise, and not many people are in this country, in this city, particularly in this area, who do not know what Rich Mix does. Welcome to the show, Jane. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you very much for having me here this evening.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor. And I thank you for making time for us, and despite all the meetings that you have to attend every day, you could make some time for us and could give us an hour or two of your evening. Welcome to the show. Jane, for the benefit of our viewers, would you like to tell something about your own self? See, I know that you are at Rich Mix and you have a rich experience of management, but apart from that, you as a person.
So me as a person, well, it's a bit of a surprise to find myself running an arts organisation and a business like this, because my previous background was all in government, both local government and central government. And my last real job before I came to Rich Mix was running a government agency taking money away from criminals with a slogan. Our mission statement was making bad people miserable. So that was a very different job from turning up in...
You sound like Robin Hood.
It was a bit like Robin Hood. It was a very interesting job. It was a new government initiative, and we had the ability, if we could prove that people had got their houses or their cars or their bank accounts from the proceeds of crime, then I could get orders in the court to take that money away from them. So really just a very good example of making sure that crime doesn't pay.
Yeah, where would that money go then?
Well, it went back to the Home Office, but then a proportion of it went back into police forces to help them fight crime, and quite a lot of it went to community projects. So it was possible to take bad money and turn it to do good things.
Yes, see.
So
bad money becomes good money. See.
Exactly. But it was a full-on job, so it was a bit of a joy to give up proper full-time work in 2007. And I have been involved with Rich Mix since 2010. Which has been a complete pleasure to come and learn a bit more about East London and all the communities who are here. And it also means that my children think that I now have a cooler job than I've ever had in the past, because they weren't very excited about work in government, but they do like the fact that I get to hear some of the coolest music and best films around.
True. Rich Mix is a charity and a social enterprise. It offers live music, films, dance, theatre, comedy, spoken word, and what have you, creative art, creative activities, all that, see. And it is for people of all ages, families, old people, all communities. You support new and local talent, you see. But what is the history of Rich Mix? When was it established? And why was it established?
Well, it goes back to the early 1990s, when a number of people in East London were very concerned about the way in which communities were very separate, where at the time, many of your viewers will remember, there were pitched battles on Brick Lane with warfare between the Bangladeshi communities and other communities and the National Front, at the time the British National Party. There were a number of people involved in the community and in the council who said that it was about time that we found a way of founding a space where people of all backgrounds could come together and could share and experience their own and others' heritages. So that was the idea in the middle of the 1990s. And so a group of very committed people started to try and raise the money to find a building where all of these activities could be housed. As always, it took a long time to find a building and to raise the money. But it's a tribute to all of them that they stuck at it, and eventually, having had a number of buildings which just didn't work out, found what was an old leather factory on Bethnal Green Road, which had been abandoned because the previous owners had not been able to trade any longer. And so the council bought that building, and the London Development Agency bought the next door building. And at that point, the hard work began to convert these two spaces into something that would achieve the goals of the original founders. And of course, that's when the fun started, because when you get architects involved, they start to talk about spaces. And people start to talk about, well, what else could we do? So that's the point at which someone said, why don't we put some cinemas in? And cinemas were added to the list, and a vague business plan was put together, and the building work started. And of course, like so many projects, it took longer to develop. So although it was thought of in the mid-1990s, it was 2006 before the doors opened with a half-finished building. And we actually opened properly in 2008, by which point all the building had been fitted out. So we've got almost a 10-year history and almost a 10-year birthday party to start to celebrate.
Yes, when is that?
Well, we're planning to do something which we hope will involve all of our communities in May to October 2016. So we're already planning.
Oh, great, great. I mean, planning always helps, see.
Yes, it does.
It also helps to plan the size of the cake, see, because the entire community is involved.
Exactly, exactly.
And 10 years...
well, we think it'll be something to celebrate, because as a charity and an organisation which earns most of its money itself, our public funding is only about 12% of our turnover. We earn everything else. To still be surviving and thriving after 10 years will certainly be worth having a party.
Yeah, you must be very efficient to earn your 88% of money that is probably ploughed in again. And you must be running it on very business-like terms and conditions.
We do run it as a business. I mean, we say that we've got three objectives. We have to provide excellent art, because excellence is at the heart of what we do. But we have to do it in a way which is financially sustainable. And, of course, we have to do it in a way which reaches increasingly large but increasingly diverse audiences.
True.
So if we can find things that tick all of those three objectives, then we're really, really happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it must be cost-effective too, isn't it? Because, you know, if you charge entrance fees, but not very exorbitant.
No.
Sometimes you have to give away things free to attract a larger part of the community, and particularly those who can't afford the high cost of tickets. See. So that's a very sensible approach, you see.
No, we're very conscious of the fact that particularly where we are in Tower Hamlets, that the average income is something less than £22,000 a year. And if you're trying to bring up a family on that amount of money, you haven't got lots of spare cash left around to be able to pay for expensive tickets. So we do quite a lot of things to provide cheaper cinema tickets, free programme as you describe, and then we make the bits of our building that can earn money, we make them work very hard.
That's very good to see, but I had asked the Honourable Mayor that we have 77 betting shops in this area, see, and that's a large number, and it shouldn't be here, see. But the greater the number of people earning less in that area, usually they have betting shops, see, because people are tempted.
Yes.
It's just a false sense that we can increase the income through betting, but it doesn't. So they go and lose money rather than earn money.
Yeah.
What are the objectives? I mean, the broad objectives are to bring people together, see, but what are the real objectives of Rich Mix, as you see, from your chair?
From what I think we're there to do is almost, as we've already touched on, it's to make sure that the building becomes a hub for all sorts of creativity. So one of the things that helps us run the building is that we've got about 15,000 square feet of workspaces for creative industries. Some of those are charities, working with young people or working in music, but some of them are businesses which generate quite substantial turnover. So we have a TV company who produce mainstream comedy programs and films, who've grown from being 4 people in a small office to now having 2 large offices and probably about 30 to 40 people employed there.
Do you provide this space at a discount?
Well, no, we provide them at fair market prices. So we have 2 rental levels. If you're a commercial company, you pay 1 rent level, and if you're a charity, you pay slightly less. But we don't do rent-free periods, and we don't do any hidden discounts. It's all completely transparent, because as a charity we have to be really clear that we're using the assets properly and fairly, and not advantaging people. But by having those 20 businesses in the building with about 300 members of staff and actually a turnover of about 25 million, we're quite a big economic hub, but we're also a hub for really interesting people who come together and who start to collaborate. So the film people may find the folks who look after installations in museums, and they may find the charity who promote education in museums, and we start to see all sorts of interesting collaborations. So that's a really exciting thing about helping those businesses to come together, as well as making such a huge economic contribution to the borough.
Great. Bangladeshi community is one, but I understand there are Somalians, and then there are people from East Europe, and I do not know, and there are so many people from so many different Caribbeans backgrounds. How do you really, bring them all together?
Well, the thing that we've discovered works is, first of all, about the programme that we put on being absolutely excellent. So for us, a really good night is perhaps a night as we've had with a wonderful young Bangladeshi woman who is a singer, with a packed out audience in our main space, 300 people in there, but not just people from the Bangladeshi community, people from all the way around, because they've come because they want to hear her sing, they want to hear the way that she performs, and they're not actually just coming because they want to support somebody from their own community. So that excellence is one of the ways that we definitely bring people together.
That's true, because I have had the opportunity to be there when some Bangladeshi programs were being shown, and the audience was completely mixed, you see.
Yes.
Not even half of them were Bangladeshis, because they're people from all over the world. It seemed like, how is it that they're also interested in Bengali art and culture?
Yeah. And it happens in reverse, of course. We will, as we had the other night, we had a very wonderful, again, a young woman who is North African, who was performing, and I looked around the main space and I looked at the people who were there, and I thought, well, this is fascinating, because there is a good mix of white people, there are a good mix of Bangladeshi people, there are certainly a great number of Afro-Caribbeans as well, and of course this is an opportunity for people to find out what unites them rather than what separates them. So we're really interested in providing those opportunities and seeing people come together.
There's always a chance of providing something that brings them together, isn't it? Because culture is cultural, and music and drama and art has no boundaries.
No.
It has its own language.
Okay. And of course the other thing that we've discovered that brings people in is, well, there are two things. One is football and one is food. So if you come to Rich Mix over the period of the World Cup in the summer, you'll find that we will show every single match on the big screen. We've got a huge screen in our main space. But as well as that, we'll also have every night a piece of performance, which might be music, it might be spoken word, it might be poetry. We've got a big street art project going to go on involving Brazilian-based artists. And because we believe that sometimes people won't walk through the door of something called an arts centre. But if they think there's something that they wouldn't find scary, like watching football, they'll come and watch that, and then they will get the chance to experience some of these other things. So our World Cup programme this year is going to be really important. Similarly, if we start to talk about, as we do quite often, community meals, where we say to people, turn up, bring a dish or pay £1.
It's a great idea, Jane, bringing people together, and as you said, that football and food, it's two important salient features in our life, entertainment and survival.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time for this segment, so we'll have to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we will rather go deeply into this food and football, because that's very fascinating to me, and I'm sure for many of our viewers. Viewers, we'll have to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll continue with our discussion with Jane Earl, CEO of Rich Mix in Bethnal Green. Thank you. Don't go away. Come back soon.
আপনারা দেখছেন টকিং পয়েন্ট।
সৌজন্যে মাহবুব অ্যান্ড কো অ্যাকাউন্টেন্টস।